Hey everyone, today I want to take a quick look at the very first adventure module published for Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition, Keep on the Shadowfell. Not only was Keep on the Shadowfell the first adventure module published for D&D 4th edition, it was actually the first product of any kind for D&D 4th edition. It was actually released in May of 2008, several weeks before the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Monster Manual would hit the shelves. Because of this, the adventure also includes a Quickstart rules booklet that includes several pre-generated characters. This book was only 16 pages long and contained the most basic player mechanics for a Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition game. You get some information about the core mechanic of rolling a d20, how to do skill checks, how to do attack rolls. There's a nice section about the different types of encounters and more specifically about how combat encounters work. And you can see that it talks about the sequence of events for combat as well as what the different actions that you would take could be. You then get into a section about how to take your turn during combat, and there's details about the types of attacks, critical hits, flanking, combat advantage, the types of things that you would need to know in order to have a combat encounter. And there's really a whole page talking about the different movement type things, about how much you can move, forced movement, the types of terrain, and how that impacts your movement. Some really nice detail in there. And then it gets into a little bit about hit points and healing and dying for your character. And then on the last page of the booklet itself, you can see information about all the different types of skills. The rest of this particular booklet is filled with the pre-generated characters. First, we have a dwarf fighter, a halfling rogue, a human wizard, a half-elf cleric, and a dragonborn paladin. The booklet is definitely the bare minimum that a player needs in order to play the game. I kind of imagine myself in a situation where I maybe had experience with Dungeons & Dragons, but was unfamiliar with 4th edition, and this would be my first glimpse into what it really was. It would have been quite a bit of a shock because it is very different from the prior editions of Dungeons & Dragons, and this booklet would have really helped me to bridge that gap and get used to what was going to be coming. Overall, it's a pretty nice introduction and has some well-formed pre-generated characters for you. Next, we get to the adventure itself, and there's a separate booklet for this. That is the Keep on the Shadowfell adventure booklet. This book is 80 pages long and contains the full adventure. First, we get some background on what is happening leading up to the adventure, the main villains, and how the adventure plays out. The keep itself was built ages ago by the Nereth Empire to protect the world against the demon prince Orcus. Orcus had opened a rift to the world and sent through skeletons and zombies and other evil creatures. The Nereth Empire fought them off, and a wizard put a magical seal over the rift. But that was centuries ago, and the keep has fallen into ruin, and the seal itself is now losing its power. A priest of Orcus named Kalarel has plans to reopen the gate and flood the world with evil once more. He has the support of a group of cultists, as well as some goblins and kobolds and hobgoblins, among others. His primary plan is to keep everyone away while he works to open the rift. We then get to some adventure hooks that can get the players more involved in the world. There are a few initial quests tied to these hooks that the players can use along the way to earn more experience points. And as you would expect, each quest has some sort of connection to the main storyline. The next section provides information about how to run the adventure and how to read the encounter sections. I think the monster stat block section is particularly nice as it breaks the stat block out line by line. It's similar to what is done in the monster manual, but I really like how they actually print the line with the description of that section to help tie it all together. Then we get into a mini Dungeon Master's Guide. I feel like this would have been better if it was a separate booklet like the player's rules were, but instead they put it inside the adventure book. That might have been to try to keep the Dungeon Master from having to keep multiple books open while they're running the adventure. It does go into a lot more detail about how to run the game, more about the different types of actions and the attack types and modifiers and details about positioning. It does have a full page talking about the different conditions that a character could have, and then goes into quite a bit of detail about the different skills and has some nice tables with the difficulties performing certain tasks. And then we get into the adventure itself. Here we get our first glimpse of the wonderful 4th edition encounter format that I've talked about before in other videos. It uses these nice 2-page layouts that have everything you need to run the encounter. You get a map of the location, what monsters are included, the monster stats, terrain features, tactics for the monsters, some box text, really everything that you need. The Dungeon Master would need maybe 5 minutes to read through this, and then they'd be able to run the entire encounter without needing to flip anywhere else. This encounter introduces the players to the adventure through an attack by a group of kobolds that are working for Kalarel. I like this next page that talks about how to handle things in between combat. It mentions how important it is to pay attention to what the players are saying so that you can keep everyone focused and learn if there's any confusion. It encourages leading questions so that you can get the players curious, and stresses the importance of following what the players want to do, even if it is different from what's written in the adventure. It's a really nice piece of advice, and it shows how they didn't want anyone to feel that they were locked into the story as written, and this can be really helpful for new DMs especially. The next section is a bit of a sandbox as the characters arrive in Winterhaven. They can explore the town and talk to the locals about what's going on. They can learn about the kobolds and the goblins that are causing problems. They might decide to pursue one of the quests from the adventure hooks, or even take on a new quest from one of the members of the town. We then get into some additional encounters as the party continues on the adventure. First, they are ambushed by more kobolds. And then the next encounter presumes that the party will decide to root out the kobolds in their lair. First, there is an encounter outside the lair, and then they go inside the lair to face off against the leader of the kobolds, who is actually a goblin named Irontooth. The burial site encounter ties back to one of the quests from the hooks. If the characters are pursuing that, then they would end up here. Otherwise, this encounter may not be used if your players are not actually going that route. I really like this next section because it provides more great advice for the dungeon masters as they work to build the world. It talks about how you should give the location some flavor. Don't just stick to the narrative as written, but bring it to life with your own descriptions. Add details that your players would appreciate. It even encourages you to insert your own side quest into the adventure to make it more interesting. I like that additional detail, and it really aligns with the approach I talked about in my other video about the Dungeon Master's Guide 2. We then get into a little more role-playing. Through the prior encounters, the party would have learned more about what is going on, and then they can talk to others in the town and get even more answers. In the end, the party realizes that they need to travel to the keep and deal with the threat head-on. They even get dubbed the Heroes of Winterhaven, and the villagers see them off. The next few pages are purely for the Dungeon Master to get some background on the keep itself. It talks about the history and provides some details about how to run it. I like that there's a good amount of detail here, but it's not overwhelming. You could see the DM being able to feel comfortable running this location fairly easily without a lot of time having to be spent up front. We then get an overview of level 1 of the keep, including high-level details of each location and a very nice map. And then we get detailed encounter pages for each location in the keep. Again, we see that 4th edition format with the map, the monsters, the monster stats, tactics, area features, all that. Some of the locations have some non-combat things like an NPC that they can talk to gain additional information, or some complex terrain that they need to navigate. Area 4 is where they face off with Balgron the Fat, who has been serving Calorel, but not because of loyalty to Calorel, but rather to accomplish his own goals. Then the adventure turns into darker encounters. No longer are the characters just facing goblins and kobolds, now it's zombies and skeletons. Area 8 is a nice role-playing encounter where they encounter the ghost of the last commander of the keep. He was guarding the rift but was corrupted and unable to fulfill his duty. After some role-playing, he grants the party a weapon to help them in the fight. We then get more encounters as they venture further into the keep and face some nasty creatures like rats and ogre jellies and Kruthix. It's not expected that the party will explore the keep in one go. It is likely that they will return to Winterhaven and recover and then return to the keep to continue the fight. Along the way, there's some side encounters dealing with a spy named Ninarin. We then get an introduction into level 2 of the keep. As with level 1, we get some notes on each location and the map of the full level. It includes some wandering monsters that you can use when the party enters a location that does not actually have a full encounter detail. The first few encounters involve a group of hobgoblins that are loyal to Calorel. They will then meet a gelatinous cube and a room with several interesting traps and zombies. And then we get into the big encounters. First, they face an underpriest of Orcus, along with a number of other creatures, including human berserkers and vampire spawn. This location uses a poster map that is included with the adventure and allows for an exciting battle. And finally, we face off with Calorel himself. It is another full poster map of the location, which makes it really interesting. And it's not just monsters, there's even a hazard that they have to avoid. This is a boss battle at its finest. In fact, this battle is so big that it needs 3 pages to cover it all. And then there is a little wrap up about what comes next. It encourages you to pick up the next adventure in the series, which would be Thunderspire Labyrinth, and of course to pick up the player's handbook once it becomes available. Overall, it's a really great adventure. If you saw my live stream where we looked through Dungeon Magazine issue number 155, they actually go through adapting this campaign for Forgotten Realms or for Eberron, but it's not really very location specific, so you can pretty much run it anywhere. It's an introductory adventure for 4th edition, and because it contains that Quickstart rule set, pre-generated characters, as well as a lot of Dungeon Master things, it's a nice self-contained set if you're looking to get started in 4th edition. Have you played it? What are your thoughts? Any details that I overlooked? Let me know down in the comments what you think. If you want to pick up a copy of this, it is available at DriveThruRPG. I will put an affiliate link down in the description if you are interested. Until next time, take care.